Dirty.
All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. I'm here with someone who's been a guest on the show, I guess a couple times at least in the past, but it's been a while. I mean, you were one of sort of the earliest guests on the show with one of your earliest projects, I guess, um, probably close to a
Yeah.
decade ago now. And this is something completely different we're talking about today. But I think maybe the best way to start this off is if you want to introduce yourself and give a bit of background about what it is you do musically, and maybe some of the bands you've been in, sort of leading up to the one we're talking about today.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me back. My name's Andy Cole. I am here talking about my band Great Wealth. But yeah, the first time I appeared on your show would have been with my old band way back in the day. We were called Eagle Lake Owls.
Yeah,
We were like, at the time, I think we were like a three-piece band, folk, and then that band kind of evolved onto like a little more of a rock band sort of thing. And yeah, and then I would have been on again
I
when
think
I
with
was in
Alamode.
Ala Mode, yeah, which was comprised of uh, Domo, who was in the original incarnation of Eagle Like Owls, and Ava, who replaced me in Ala Mode, but was also in Eagle a later incarnation of Eagle Like Owls.
I think it's just a good
Uh,
example of how incestuous the local music scene is, right? Everyone's in each other's bands or has been at one point or another.
that's it, yeah. And like, there's so much talent, and there's so many people you meet that you're like, I want to work with that person. It's just fun. It's fun to collab, and it's why you see so many people of the same people in so many things is because you get to like, the people you collab with. Like Nathan Cron, who's in Great Wealth now, was in like every iteration of Eagle Like Owls, and the sort of an earlier stage of Great Wealth. Like Nathan is someone pretty almost every musical thing I've done in Winnipeg, I've done with him. And then it's kind of a cast of characters around that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, Great
yeah.
Wealth. I mean, maybe let's just kind of dig into what Great Wealth is, because I mean, I think I'd heard the name. I think we probably talked about it briefly about maybe doing this a while back, and it didn't happen. And I'm glad we're doing it
Mhm.
now. But how long has Great Wealth actually been a project?
It really, the first time it started was it sort of came together in like late 2018, early 2019, and we started like I had this idea for sort of coming out of what Eagle Like Owls was, which was like this really kind of like I was trying to be very earnest and write these emotional kind of songs, but I was tired of being so like morose and like sad as like folk and folk inspired rock, which is kind of what it turned into
Yeah,
was. And so I said, Great Wealth, I want it to be this thing that's kind of like more exuberant and more fun and still very honest and still like these songs like it's a lot more like fun beats based and loud, and I yell all the time and I lose my voice every time we play. It's terrible, but that was the idea. Was I really wanted to keep writing in that same feeling, but I wanted it to be, what I consider more enjoyable experience to listen to or
right,
witness on
right.
stage.
But I guess
Not
that last Eagle Like Owls EP it was pretty high energy compared to the previous stuff, right? I mean, you were definitely kind of
Yeah.
leaning that direction. It was maybe a bit of a bummer, some of the like content wise, but like sound
Yeah.
wise, it was a party.
Yeah, oh thanks. Yeah, yeah. It was, yeah, and that's sort of where that was the jumping off point for this band was, yeah, it was like, it was about having a little more fun. Yeah, content. I mean, the I'll say the songwriting content wise, it's not much rosier a lot of the time, but um I mean, we can get into that, but mainly I wanted to kind of have more fun on stage, and and we even had to tinker around with that when we started the band. So like I said, sorry, I should make clear, it formed like 2018, 2019. We played I think two or three shows, and then like everybody, we didn't play shows for 2.5 years or whatever. So over the pandemic, there was kind of retooling with as far as who was in the band
Yeah,
and what the band was going to sound like. So you remember Eagle Lake Owls, we had like strings, we had like the cello and stuff. And Gage Sonikowski, who is also in the band now, I mean, he can play everything, but he was playing a lot of violin, and Nathan was playing cello, and we were trying to do this like switching around between all these people of like, we want bass, we want guitar, we want cello, we want drums, we want everything. But we were like 5 people and it was just
Right.
too much. So what Great Wealth is pared down to now is like I wanted a band that was like relatively easy to put up on stage. So we got rid of the strings live. We recording wise, there's none on this EP, but there will be on other stuff we do. But that's another big difference. Yeah, is we wanted to make it an easier live experience for us because if you're for anyone who's sound checked with strings players, it's the most beautiful thing when you can pull off a show and the strings are great, but
Yeah.
it instantly adds like 20 minutes to your sound check and like everyone is just it's rough. So
Well, and that's kind of something that comes up a lot on the show. Not strings particularly, but just the idea of people having a lot of layers on their records, a lot of additional instruments that maybe aren't there in the live band. And then there's the kind of the question of how do you
yeah.
adjust the sound so it fits and it doesn't feel like it's missing anything. And I mean, it sounds like
Yeah.
the fact that you didn't use the strings in the recording maybe makes it a little easier to do that part of things.
Yeah, there's not much on the EP that we don't do live. Like um there's a little extra guitar parts added just to kind of flesh it out, but I think, my consideration with stuff like that was that um when deciding to pare down the band and what it was going to be live and what we were going to record was like I'm fine if there's things in the recording that we don't necessarily like pull off exactly like note perfect,
Yeah,
hey, that's on the recording, you didn't do it there. Like nothing I don't want anything very important to be happening in the recording that we can't do live. But I wanted to be part of the idea of our live show is like I wanted it to be fun enough that if it is different, you are still having that fun experience when you sing it live. If it's not note for note the exact same thing, sometimes that's more fun anyway.
yeah.
I wouldn't say we reinterpret things live really, or at least at this point, but I think we pull it off.
Cool. Well, and you alluded to the whole missing years that everyone had with the pandemic. And so, like you said, this band started sort of before that. Then you had that obvious gap. Were the songs on this EP written prior to all of this, or are they songs that kind of came about in the post-pandemic incarnation of the band?
Only one of the songs is what it was developed pre-pandemic
Okay,
on
okay,
the EP. It's the last track on there. It's called "What If I Can't Let Go," and it's like a pretty. I wrote it a long time ago, and it was it was like I love it. It's the only really like deeply personal song on it for me, but it was also tough. It took work for us for the band when we were beginning to get to that sound because something that happened when we were when I was forming the band, I was trying to explain what the sound was to everybody. I'm like, oh, I want because everyone in the band knew me already,
right.
and
They
most
have
of
an
them had
idea of
played.
what you've played before, right? And what you're sort of
Yeah,
yeah,
so I'm like, oh, and it's like this, and everyone's trying to play this like the singer-songwriter kind of style of like the
sure,
song. And I'm like, no, 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 it's not like that. It's like this. And I'm like trying to do this like thing with the beat. And everyone's like, they're like, is there an example? And I pulled up my phone and I played the song Regret by New Order just into the microphone at the jam space. And everybody was like, oh, you want it to sound like that? I'm like, yes, I want this to sound like that. This is what I want the band to sound like. I want, if I could just write that song over and over, I would be so happy. It's one of my favorite songs ever. So that was like that was a good starting point. And I'm glad it's on the EP because it is a symbol of like where the band came into the sound that I really wanted. And then two of the songs, I think the first track and the third track, the first song is called "You Love This Once." It was the single we put out ahead,
yeah,
and the third track is called "It Runs in the Family." And those I wrote about a week apart during the pandemic when like everyone else, my life just collapsed and everything was pretty terrible and a bunch of stuff was going bad outside of that for me. And I just was inspired to just write these two songs that are sort of mirrors of two different types of breakups.
okay.
Um, and so those are kind of indicative of where I was writing at that time and still trying to put this new version of the band together where we finally are at this solid lineup now. And then, yeah, one of the songs was written just back in last spring. It's very new, and we're just super excited about it, that one. So,
Cool. I think it'll be interesting in like 10 years from now to look back at songs that were written in that period with that kind of hindsight because we're still too close to it, I think. But there's going to be some weird stuff that came out, right after the
Yeah,
pandemic or during the pandemic that maybe we're too close
yeah,
to it now to. Not saying that yours is going to be the weird thing, but I think there's going to be a lot of art that was created that is going to be very, very clearly inspired
yeah.
by that. That it's going to be obvious sort of down the road.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I was like, I mean, some of it came out during the pandemic. There was
Sure,
contemporaneous pandemic art, and I honestly I didn't really love it because it was a lot about like let's connect. But the way everyone was connecting was like we're doing right now over
that's right.
Zoom. And I'm like, that's depressing. I don't want to be reminded that it's the only way I can see my friends or my family, or my grandma who's a million years old.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
don't want
yeah.
I don't want the last time I see her to be over Zoom. Thankfully it wasn't. But
That's good. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, yeah, I think I mean the writing for this is nothing, I don't ever want to get specific into that time if I can help it because I didn't have a good time during the pandemic. Not like anyone really did, but
yeah.
uh, I don't want to live through that again. I don't want to think about it other than, masking up when I get sick and being careful.
Yeah, which hopefully most people
It was a
are
bummer.
taking some of those steps. But so, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to dwell on the I've dwelt on the pandemic twice a week for years now. But I mean, like on this show. But I mean, now that hopefully we're past it. Shows are happening. They've been happening for a while. All of
Mhm.
the things that people can do as far as performing and going to shows and getting people to come out to shows, that's all back and has been for quite some time. So, what? How much have you guys played out with this lineup of the band? Sort of since
Uh,
it formed into its current iteration.
became what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've done maybe 6 shows since like June of 2023. So
Okay.
not like a whole lot. I'd like to do more. It's just it's tough. I think that, a real impetus, not just because we like playing shows, but a real impetus to get this EP done was that we don't have anything out there, and it's hard to like book shows when you're like, yeah, hey,
Sure.
we're a band, trust us, we're a real band, trust us, there's whatever. And the only thing you can give them is like video on Instagram or something to prove you're a band. So we're like, well, that's why we wanted to do the EP, was to have that proof. So yeah, I mean, we haven't, I'll say too, what I really love is that, I mean, we haven't played a ton of shows, but we also haven't played like a real bummer show yet, like a show that's like, oh, I wish we hadn't done that.
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully you can continue that
It,
streak
it
of
it
yeah.
it always will. It eventually will,
It will
right? But
eventually. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but I think we're prepared for it because like we got lucky with our first few shows. Like I booked a really good lineup ahead for our like debut show last summer. And then we got on in September, we got on our friends Leon's Getting Larger, who are playing the EP release show with us
Okay.
on May 11th. Local guys, they're very good. One of my favorites in the city. They had us on their EP release show back in September, and at the Goodwill, and it was packed. And we actually got a really good full-length video of the set from a local team that Leon's had brought in, and they offered video to all the other bands on there.
Nice. That's
Which was,
good to
hey, we
have.
took it, and yeah, and it's like high def, like it looks
Cool.
beautiful. And even the sound, they just had like a boom on the camera, just like a little fixed one.
Yeah.
And even then, it's like it's not perfect, but it's like it's sound in the room and it's great. But the video looks fantastic. We've used it for all our promo material. Um, yeah, they're really great. Just trying to remember their name. Solid Fuel is who did it. If anyone's
Okay.
interested,
Okay. Well,
I'll
that's
give
good to
them a
have as like
shout
a
out.
calling card too, right? That live. I mean, obviously having the EP helps maybe even more because you'll be on all the streaming platforms and all that crap that people seem to care about a lot. But I mean, having the video
Yeah.
gives kind
Yeah.
of an indication of not only what does it sound like, but what is the show like, and that's got to be beneficial for booking shows too.
Mhm. Yeah, we had a great show that night, so I'm really happy that's if I could have picked any show that we ever played, that's the one I'm glad that we got good video of.
Cool.
And it's yeah, like we try to all have energy in the band. Like Gage again plays the one, like I said, we don't have strings anymore, but the one sort of like slightly uncommon instrument we have. Gage plays tenor saxophone. So when you hear and see a saxophone, you get like people just get excited. Like I
Sure.
love hearing a saxophone
Yeah, me
like
too.
a high energy rock song. You're like, yeah, this is cool. Okay. And he's very good at it. So
That helps.
um yeah, it helps when your guy plays it well. So yeah. So I also want to say I've mentioned everybody in the band except our drummer Kyle, Kyle Kunkel, who was the last edition. We had a lot of trouble finding a drummer, and I knew Kyle, but I'm in another band with Kyle called Hearing Trees,
Okay, yeah, right, of
and
course, yeah, yeah.
which I forgot to mention. But yeah, Kyle and I played together in that, and I just thought it'd be weird. You know what I mean? Just like, should I be asking him if? And I did. He's like, yes, I was waiting for you to ask me. So
That's
he
good.
came in, slipped right in. You know, he and I have toured together, for weeks and weeks at a time, so we know each other, and he knows what I'm about. So he came right in and played great. So another great part of the live experience. And speaking of the video, like we were saying, he turns up great in the video. So
Awesome. That's yeah, you can't complain about any of that. So
Hmm.
the whole thing about not having not played a lot of shows and sort of the fact that they kind of paired with the fact that this is a different project from what people might associate with you, people who have seen you in other bands. Have you figured out sort of where this project fits within the local music scene? I mean, I know you mentioned, some other bands you play with, but do you have an idea of sort of, because there's so many little micro scenes and things like that sort of within the
Yeah.
larger music community, right? Like, do you have an idea of sort of, who your audience is, who your brother and sister bands are, like where you fit in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm friends with like I mentioned, like the Leons Getting
Yeah.
Larger guys. They're great, and I knew them before they played their first show. They're like way younger than me, but I used to work with two of the guys,
Okay.
and all of them are just like easy to get along with, cool people. We all vibe really good. We all jam above the Goodwill, like we have jam spaces up there, so we see each other all the time. So those guys, just from like knowing them, we're at each other's shows all the time. I also know a couple of the guys in Guilty Sleep,
Okay.
another one of the very best bands in town that you could ever see. I can't recommend them enough, as well. And we might be doing a show with them. I don't know if I want to. I don't think it's been announced, and I think it's a for sure thing, but we'll see about that. But they're a close friend of mine, Eric, also from Hearing Trees, is in that band. And so yeah, I consider them like a friend band. There's a few, like I think it's just mainly from knowing people and getting to know some people. But I mean, for me, like the thing, when I go to shows now is like everybody there, not everybody there, but like depending on the show, the majority of people will be like 10 to 20 years younger than me.
Yeah, I
And
know the feeling. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, exactly. And what I don't want to be is like I'm fine being like the oldest or older guy in a room, but I just don't want to like act like I'm the oldest person. When like you meet an older guy and he's like, I've seen it all before. It's like, that sucks, man. Like I think that's the main thing I'm trying to do is just like have an open mind and be excited about all the music that you're seeing. It's a
yeah,
bummer when people aren't, and I think like whatever, I still fall into it. Sometimes I'm in a bad mood or something, and I'm like, nah, I've heard this kind of music, but I don't tell them that. I just mumble that to myself, and
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
still stay there and enjoy it. I pay to get in. I buy a tape or a sticker or something. Like I just you want to be supportive. If something's not your thing, it's like I just the worst thing I ever want to do is feel old, and it's very easy to feel old, especially when you are visibly older than most of the
yeah, yeah.
people around you.
Well,
But I'm just like I think. Oh, sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
I was gonna say I think there's something to the idea of recognizing when something isn't for you and that it can still be good even though you're sort of not in the demographic that it's
Yeah.
made for, right? I mean, there's
Oh yeah.
doing this show, I talk to people who play all kinds of music, and there's often, especially much younger artists who are like, someone 20 years old. I'm in my 40s. What they make is not necessarily going to be something that I connect to, but there's plenty of
Mhm.
reasons why it's good and why it's interesting and why I want to find out more about it, right? So I think
Yeah.
there's it's often hard to be like, oh, this is terrible, I don't like it, but then it's like, wait, this part is cool. I want to find out why that happened. I think that happens at live shows too. If you can hone in on
Yeah.
something that sort of makes it interesting, and you can sort of, you know, yeah, zero in on that, and then you can enjoy it the same as you would anything else.
Yeah, you can appreciate it for sure. And I want to say too, like I really want to make clear, like I couldn't name the thing I was even talking about. Like
Of
I
course,
don't
yeah,
even
yeah,
know. I just like like I really do enjoy. I think there's so much cool stuff happening in the music scene. And like speaking of being older too, I think something I love is like Leon's Getting Larger are like they're like a Midwest emo band. And when I was first talking to them about like what music they play, they're like Midwest emo. I'm like, I didn't even know what that was, right? What is that genre? And then they played me like some like demo tracks they made just in their jam space. I'm like, oh, this like I listened to this 20 years ago. This is like this was just emo. We just called it emo, but like I get emo there. I know there was another wave of emo that was like
A
different.
very different one.
And
Yeah, yeah,
Midwest emo, I'm like, oh my God, like you gotta listen to Get Up Kids. You gotta
yeah,
listen
exactly.
to like there's this band, my old band in like 2002 played with that these guys sound so much like, and it made me so excited that I'm uh like the bands I'm gonna keep pumping them up, but like bands like Leon's like what I like and what I think a lot of this new Midwest emo it does is like it's that stuff I liked when I was younger, but it's modern, it's a little smarter, it's a
Yeah,
little I'll say, I don't know, briefer, like a little I think people are just better editing, self-editing their music right now. And so I'm
yeah, I
like,
think so.
it's better. That's the other thing I like. It's just I like it better. So it's yeah, that's what's fun too about still going to shows
Definitely,
and still being engaged and
for
yeah,
sure.
like
Yeah,
I mhm.
there's a benefit to it, 100%.
Yeah, yeah, I would hate. There was a few years, and I don't even think I'm counting the pandemic. A few years I just really wasn't making music, and I wasn't going to music, and so I guess sometimes you need time away. But I look at that now, I'm like, man, I must have missed so much good stuff. Like, there's so many bands right now that like they're here and they're gone, and they might never even record something.
That's right.
And I'm like, you know, I probably missed some good stuff. There's stuff I've seen already here that in the last year that like they were here, they did some shows, they were amazing, and then they're gone.
And just never to be heard from again. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's that Wilco song, "The Late Greats."
right, right.
It's the last track on Ghost is Born where he talks about like these bands, the best band you never saw, like they never even played a show. I think is the line in the song.
Yeah. Winnipeg
It's
has a
just
lot of
like a
those for
band.
sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but by the time this comes out, people will have already heard if they're checking out your stuff, they will have heard the EP. The EP's out.
Mhm.
What what's the best way to find this? I mean, I know we're in an era where people listen to music in 1,700 different ways. Where would you direct
Yeah.
someone, uh, ideally to check out the EP?
Yeah, I mean it's everywhere you get your music online. I'll say, Spotify is easy. I have Spotify. It's easy, but we're never gonna make a dollar off it. If you want to support music, I appreciate that. And Bandcamp is the best way.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I was just updating our thing. I'm sorry, I'm gonna open the tab. I think it's just greatwealth.bandcamp.com.
Well, I'll link to
You
it in
can
the show notes too, so people can actually just
Okay,
click right on there. Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, yeah, Bandcamp is the best place. I don't think I put a limit on streaming, so if you like it, you can listen to it as many times as you want on there. It's not going to bug you. If you want to kick some money in, we appreciate that. If you're in Winnipeg, come on out to a show. We just got a pile of new merch as well. So if
Awesome.
you like merch stuff, yeah.
Cool. And then, the good thing about this being a podcast, someone could hear it the day it comes out, in which case this is a very new record, or they could hear it a year from now, 2 years from now, whatever. I assume I'm going to be doing this show like in perpetuity. So, what's the
Yeah.
best way to sort of keep up with what the band's doing as far as shows, releases, things like that? Because, by the time someone hears this, you could have a brand new album happening, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I feel like we're most active on Instagram, so I would say go there. Great Wealth Music is our handle, and I think that's our handle on something else. I don't know if you put Great Wealth Music all one word into Google, you'll definitely find us.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, do not try and contact me through Facebook. Someone did it this week, and I didn't even know how to reply to them anymore. Facebook is it's insane. So yeah, I'd say Instagram
Do
is
the
probably the
Instagram. Yeah.
best. Yeah,
Awesome.
this is the best. And Instagram's still to me the most fun one. So
Right on. Cool.